Free. Hey everyone, welcome back to the realm. I'm Gina.
I'm Rich. How's everybody doing tonight?
So we are here. I'm great if you're asking me.
Of course, I'm asking you. I mean,
So tonight in place of our weird weekly news, we are bringing you well, we say tonight because we're recording it tonight, but you could be listening to this in the daytime, who knows? But in place of our weird weekly news, we are going to read a uh a submitted ghost story. So every week during the month of October, we're reading other people's paranormal experiences, weird experiences, those kinds of things. So if you have one, send it in. Maybe we don't get a chance to read it in October, but that doesn't mean we won't read it anyway. So, right,
correct.
Rich? We want to hear
Yeah,
from
I agree 100%.
let's hear from everybody. Okay.
Yep.
So this one seemed kind of spooky, so I'm gonna read this one this week again, and then you'll have Rich's dazzling voice for the next 2 weeks for our spooky stories.
Oh
So,
boy. Here we go.
well, you said you were the star, so I mean.
Well, that's in my own mind. I am the star.
Well,
That's,
I can't wait. Well, it's okay. We have to believe in ourselves, right?
that's right. That's right.
All right, so I'm interested to hear what you think of this story. So
Okay.
here we
Lay it
go.
on me. Lay it on me, sister.
Lay it on me. All right, here we go. So, who or what was haunted, us or the house? So, that just always sounds bad whenever we start off like that. All right. So this is from an anonymous submission. So here we go. I married young and my husband, well, ex-husband now, but anyway, he and I were living in a cute starter home in the Hall of Fame city of Canton, Ohio. We lived in a good area on a small street behind the large, beautiful homes that lined the street in one of the nicer areas of the town. Some of the homes were older and stately looking, and with the age and look of some of the homes, you would judge them for face value and just assume they were haunted. A lot of stories floated around about the houses on that side of town. It was close by a well known funeral home, so any house surrounding it had so many rumors about them, especially the large funeral home itself that sat elevated on a small hill. From the time I moved into this small town house, I couldn't say right off the bat that I thought it was haunted, but something just didn't feel quite right. And to be fair, though, myself and my husband were both what you would call sensitive, but with different versions of the gift. He was someone that could read people very well and easily could sense when energy was different, but he never communicated with the other side. He was very much interested in it, though, and he came from a long line of men in the family that were gifted in one way or another in that way. In fact, I was told by an elder of the family that the men were passed down the ability to give what was called the maloik, which is maloicchio in Italian. The word maloik became the Americanized version of the term from Italian immigrants to this country. And essentially, it was the ability to cast a curse or an evil eye on somebody. Um, and I guess you had to have the ability to do that. Let's see here. Even one of the men was a pretty well known psychic medium from his family in his day. My husband and I used to play psychic games with each other. We would lay side by side and sometimes have our heads touching and draw numbers and letters or shapes in our minds, and the other one would have to guess. We'd get it right the majority of the time, and it was a really cool exercise to flex our sensitive muscles. I grew up differently, however, never exposed to the psychic world. I mostly thought I was normal until I realized that I wasn't. I would know or say things that my mother or other people would say that I shouldn't or couldn't possibly know or even remember. I could recall things and events to where I was in my playpen, so I was definitely under the age of 2. I always sensed when spirits were around. I would hear water turning on, doors opening, and things like that, even though nothing was turned on or even opened when I got up to check. But I would hear a whole world living that wasn't living at all. I would know who was calling my mom before she would even pick up the phone to answer it. I would even know sometimes when the phone was about to ring before it would ring. I would actually get scolded from my mom or by my mom for most of those moments. And she would yell at me and say, "Stop it." But I just didn't know how. So I just started learning at a very young age to just be quiet. This story isn't about me, though, so I won't tell my whole story as a sensitive, but I wanted to provide context for how things unfolded in our little home and why we would have maybe been more susceptible to the experiences. We had an almost 2-year old when we moved into the house, and I quickly became pregnant with my second child. I found that my senses were heightened when I was pregnant, so I wasn't surprised by the increase of feelings that I just wasn't alone most times. Even my daughter would say she would see someone in her room, or I would catch her looking at things that weren't there. It was odd because we rarely sensed things at the same time. Kind of funny how this gift works. Anyway, we would have many things happen that even my ex would experience. My daughter's toys would start making sounds and when nobody was playing with them. I mean, it would happen all hours of the day and night. Imagine having a toy on the enclosed porch that's just on the other side of your bedroom wall, and all of a sudden it started sounding of a siren noise in the middle of the night. We were startled awake on many occasions by this. We'd run out and check the toys and try to troubleshoot, but could never find any problems. And what's worse and more confusing was that the button was always in the off position. One particular day, I remember napping, exhausted from, growing a baby and taking care of a home and a 2-year old. I was completely awoken out of a dead sleep by the loudest pounding you could imagine coming across the ceiling, as if a giant was pounding his feet across the attic floor. Not only did it sound threateningly loud, but it seemed to shake the whole house as well. We didn't live near any mines and we weren't on a fault line and there was no one else home and definitely nobody knocking at my door. And I was so confused and shaken up. I called out, "Who's there?" And I was met with just silence. The activity would wax and wane until eventually one night we were woken up by our daughter crying. She was standing just inside the doorway beyond the foot of our bed, and she just stood there in her nightgown, hair in her face, just crying. Now, she was just getting used to sleeping in her toddler bed, so that we could use the crib for her little brother that was on the way. And so sometimes she would do this. So I said to her, half asleep, "Come on up in bed, sweetie," as I laid my head back down and patted the bed with my hand. She didn't move. She just continued to stand there in the doorway, whimpering. Her dad woke up and said, "Come on, sweetie, come lay with daddy." And again, she just stood there. We both sat up and my ex held out his arms to her and we both said, "Come on, sweetie, come on to bed." And just then she completely vanished right in front of our eyes. We were frozen in fear and I immediately screamed. I grabbed onto my husband and said, "Oh my God, she died in her sleep. Oh my God." And we were both freaking out. And I tore out of the bedroom and tore out of the bedroom, running for her room. And I'm screaming at him to come help me. And I was sure I was going to find horror. We made it to the bed and grabbed her, and she was fast asleep, actually. We sighed relief and picked her up and carried her to our bed and held her tight. And we were just in disbelief as to what we saw. Did she astral project? I mean, is that a thing? Was it bad spirits disguising itself as a little girl to lure us? Who knows? In the year and a half after, nothing like that had happened, but we continued to have little things happen. My son was the next one that said he saw a man in the house. He called him Duke. He wasn't even 2 years old at the time, and he would point up to the ceiling and say, "Duke." Well, I mean, actually, he said Dookie. Time passed, and when we were getting ready to move and decided to rip up the carpet in the back bedroom to put down a fresh rug and make it look nice. And wouldn't you know, when we pulled up that old carpet, we found a pentagram inside of a circle, or maybe just some type of altar space or even a portal carved right into the hardwood floors of the bedroom. I was glad to get out of that house, but who knows who or what was really haunted, us or the house, because our experiences with the other side didn't stop there. But that's a story for another time. What do you think?
Interesting.
It's always interesting.
Spooky.
So, I mean, if
I
I
can,
pulled,
I think it would make you think twice about that. I don't know. Hmm.
maybe you should like pull up old carpet a lot sooner.
It's funny you say that though, because that's not the first time I've ever heard that. You hear that a lot.
Really?
You hear that a lot. Um, okay, I haven't heard that personally, but
Right.
when you see
Watching shows or something.
watching shows and stuff, that's a big thing. Kind of like probably like one of our episodes I think we got coming up about Ouija boards and stuff like that.
Hmm.
A lot of times you hear people find stuff under the wallpaper, different
Right.
things painted on the walls and stuff like that, or in the basement a lot. People find stuff like that, pentagrams or different symbols.
Right.
So I mean, not only the symbol alone, but what was it there for, and what did someone else do?
Right. Like, why
What were
would
they
they put
trying to
them?
do? Yeah, exactly. Why was it there? That's yeah.
I think we talked before how, like, sometimes younger kids or teenagers or certain groups of people, they want to experiment with things. They think it's cool. They'll start doing things that they've seen in movies, or they'll briefly pick up a book somewhere, but not really read the whole thing and
Mm-hmm.
start drawing or using symbols or using, different things and not fully understanding what they're doing. And so it could have been innocent in nature in that sense that somebody carved it to look cool. Maybe
Maybe.
shock factor, but yeah.
Does it say? Does this anonymous person say what year this was, or was it at the beginning and I missed it?
So it was not at the beginning, but went going back to her email. That would have been in 1994. She said
Okay.
that they were in the house from 1993 until 1998.
Okay. So it's a
So,
little later than I would think for some of that. I mean, a lot of times that stuff I would think maybe in the 70s, or I mean, not that it doesn't happen where people are
right,
doing that and doing like seances or doing any type of dark stuff. I
right,
don't know, 90s. I'm not sure that was a big thing, but I suppose you had your clusters of different groups that,
right.
who knows, but to me it sounds like it had something to do with the house after
Yeah,
this
and I'm trying to
story.
think like in the 90s, like what was going on? I mean, there wasn't like a whole lot of like I don't remember hearing much about a lot of satanic stuff in and around that time. I
No, and the
mean,
ghost hunting stuff didn't start till the early 2000s on TV, where you started seeing more of the shows and the popularity of that type of stuff. I mean, probably the biggest thing you saw in the 90s and stuff like that were different movies probably that came out. I
yeah,
can't
like
think of
I
it off the top
think
of my
when
head,
when
but
was the Blair Witch Project? Like was that
that was 90
98
something,
or
I believe.
okay. Yeah, like
Maybe,
98 or 99, I think was the Blair Witch
I don't
Project.
know. I'm gonna hold on. I'm gonna 1997. Look it up real quick. See if I'm right.
Okay, let's see. Blair Witch Project.
This is gonna be a new segment on our show. It's gonna be called "Rich Predicts the Answer."
1999. All
Oh yeah.
right.
Well, okay.
Use the
Forget it.
microphone.
That segment's not a good idea.
we'll
I
we'll
changed
work
my mind.
we'll work on your psychic skills.
Well, hey, how am I going to learn if I don't try?
That's right. That's okay. I don't fault you. You're very close in that.
I knew it was late 90s. Um,
You're very
I
close.
think I've seen it one time. I should probably watch it again.
I just watched it again. I think we just watched both of them again, like just this past year, because I think we had our nieces spending the night, and they're like in those early teen years or all this stuff
Right.
school. So we did watch the Blair Witch Project. So
Right. Where you were probably going with that is about that had a lot to do with symbols and witchcraft or
yeah, so I mean, we had like just looking through, I mean, I think when I think about that time, we had really nothing. I mean, I think the craziest thing before then was all the rumors going on about Ozzy Osbourne biting the heads of bats and
Sure.
stuff like that. I remember that in the years
Sure.
preceding that. But when you think about it, if they said they lived in that house from 93 to 98, I think it said in the email, you have to think like Blair Witch didn't come out till 99. So was the carpet in there the whole time? So it had to have been like preceding
True.
1993.
Yeah, okay, I gotcha.
So,
Yeah, I see where you're going with that.
yeah. So it's like, okay,
Just
so
because they found it then doesn't mean that's when it was. It could have
right.
been there for
Who knows what the
50 years.
influence
Who
was at
knows?
the time? Yeah, who knows what the influence was at the time that was
Hmm.
put in there? But
Interesting.
yes, very cool.
Maybe a
So
little black magic going on there, or
yeah, we'll see. Well, hopefully the family is okay.
let's hope.
It sounded like their story continued, but maybe
Definitely
we'll
not something I would want to find. That's for sure.
talk about scary.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for listening in on our scary, spooky stories session. We'll be back with you next week. Actually, so next Monday we're talking about what is that? Demonic possessions, correct?
Correct. Demonic possession and crimes related to that possession.
Yes. We'll have a guest on the show that day who will be discussing some of those with us because I think we each decided to, find a case and
Is it
present.
Linda Blair? Is it Linda Blair? Because she was possessed at one time, I believe.
No,
No,
she
it's
was
not
in
her.
a movie. She was
Oh, that's a
only
movie.
possessed in a movie. She was only it's got to separate fact from fiction.
Well, Ozzy, he had been possessed to bite the head off that bat. Maybe he,
Oh my God. Can you imagine? In fact, I just saw like an article with something like Jack Osborne talking about his haunted home or something growing up. So I really want to dive into that and read like
Yeah.
what he experienced as a kid because he has a paranormal show now that he does.
Right. I've seen bits and pieces of it. Yeah.
So anyway, having said that, we will have a special guest joining us next Monday. Not only will they help be part of the conversation, but they're going to get interviewed at the end when we talk about their experience with being influenced by a spirit. So we're really excited to have them on.
Yep. Looking forward to it.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks again. Have a great night. And until next time, stay weird.
Au revoir.